Have you ever stopped to realize how much power you've handed to someone who only brings chaos into your life? Not because they earned it. Not because they deserved it. But because you kept answering the calls, kept replying to the texts, kept opening the door when they knocked, hoping maybe this time would be different. Toxic people don't storm in with red flags waving and alarms blaring. No, they creep in quietly, like rust on a strong piece of metal, slow, unnoticed, and seemingly harmless. Until one day, you look down, and the thing you relied on to carry you through your heaviest burdens is already breaking apart. That's how it starts. A few harmless comments. A little manipulation disguised as concern. Silent expectations wrapped in guilt. And then, before you even know it, your peace belongs to someone who feeds on disturbing it. Think of access as keys. Every conversation, every shared secret, every piece of your time, it's a key. And the more keys you hand out to the wrong people, the more doors you'll have to keep locking again and again. Until your whole life is filled with noise, confusion, exhaustion. But the beautiful thing is, you still hold the master key. You get to decide who enters. You get to change the locks. And the moment you do, something powerful happens. They lose control. Not because you shouted. Not because you argued. But because you stopped showing up to their game. There's something quietly revolutionary about not reacting. About no longer explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. About no longer trying to heal someone who keeps cutting deeper every time you reach out. Because silence is not weakness. It is clarity. It is control. It is a statement that says, you will not live rent-free in my peace anymore. Toxic people are like fires. They consume whatever gives them oxygen. Give them your energy, and they'll burn hotter. But take it away. Starve them of fuel. The flames die down. The smoke clears. And suddenly, the chaos loses its grip. I remember a friend, let's call him Daniel. He worked in a place where one colleague made it his mission to constantly complain, manipulate, and gossip. At first, Daniel tried to be polite, understanding, patient. But every time he walked away from a conversation, he felt heavier. Tired. Drained. Until one day, he started making small changes. Shorter answers. Less eye contact. He walked away earlier. No long goodbyes. No drawn-out explanations. And within weeks, the tension vanished. The colleague moved on. Why? Because Daniel stopped feeding the fire. He stopped giving him what he needed, reaction. You see, strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the person who says less. Who smiles instead of argues. Who keeps walking when poked. That kind of strength rattles toxic people the most, because they can't touch it. They can't manipulate it. They can't feed on it. But here's the catch, that strength only survives when you set boundaries like armor. And the first piece of armor is access. Control who gets your time. Control who hears your stories. Control who stands beside you when you're vulnerable. Because not everyone deserves front row seats to your life. Let them earn that ticket. Let them prove they're not just there to spectate your downfall. You don't have to be cold. You have to be clear. You don't have to be rude. You have to be rooted. Rooted in your values, your priorities, your peace. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to make someone a little less relevant in your day. Not because you hate them, but because you love your sanity more. And once you reclaim your access, the next step is even more powerful, emotional detachment. The truth is, toxic people don't need to be in the room to control you. They can do it from a distance. Through your thoughts. Through your emotional reactions. Through the memories they left behind. But the moment you learn to guard your emotions, to stop letting Insult hit the deepest parts of your self-worth, you become unshakable. Because when they can no longer trigger you, they lose their grip. And when you no longer explain yourself, they lose their power. And when you no longer need their approval, they lose their illusion of superiority. That is the moment their game ends. Not with noise. Not with drama. But with quiet resolve. A peace so firm, they can't touch it. A strength so still, they can't bend it. And that, right there, is the beginning of true freedom. The freedom to live untouched by manipulation. The freedom to love without needing permission. The freedom to walk away without guilt. That's what happens when you stop giving them access, and finally start giving that space back to yourself. The one who needed it the most all along. Have you ever realized how much of your day is shaped by someone else's energy? One text message, one sarcastic comment, one cold stare, and suddenly your whole mood shifts. You're walking around with a heaviness that isn't even yours. That's the cost of emotional access. It's not just about who physically surrounds you, it's about who you allow into your mental space, your emotional world, your sense of peace. And the most dangerous part? It feels normal. It feels like love. Because we've been taught that to care is to constantly be available. That to prove loyalty is to tolerate disrespect. That love means staying through toxicity, even when it robs you of yourself. But Buddhism teaches something deeper, something quieter, that love without wisdom is attachment. And attachment without boundaries leads to suffering. When you begin to truly awaken, you start to see your relationships through a different lens, not of guilt, but of growth. You stop asking, why are they like this, and you start asking, why do I keep allowing this? And that shift is everything. Because toxic people don't just feed off of what they do, they feed off of what you allow. They thrive on your silence, your over-explaining, your hope that they'll eventually appreciate your effort. But the truth is, they're not wired to appreciate peace, they're wired to exploit it. And once they realize you're not giving them what they want, they'll try harder. That's when the gaslighting begins. The guilt-tripping. The subtle jabs masked as jokes. The "you've changed" speeches meant to pull you back into the storm. But here's the truth, you did change. And that's the point. You changed when you realized that love doesn't have to hurt. You changed when you decided your peace was more important than proving your loyalty to someone who never honored it. You changed when you stopped mistaking chaos for chemistry. And every step you take away from that energy is a step toward your own healing. Think of your peace like a still pond. Every toxic word, every manipulative action, they're stones tossed in. They disturb the calm. They ripple through your day, your focus, your health. But when you stop reacting, when you stop giving them stones to throw, the water settles. And in that stillness, you finally see yourself clearly again. Buddhism speaks often of the middle path, the quiet place between reaction and retreat. That's where your power lives. Not in shutting everyone out, but in choosing who gets to come in. Not in fighting every battle, but in choosing which ones deserve your energy. Not in explaining yourself endlessly, but in knowing that your truth doesn't need validation to be real. And once you begin living from that place, your place, people will notice. Some will respect it. Others will resent it. But that's not your burden to carry. Not everyone will applaud your healing. Some will try to sabotage it. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your growth reminds them of their own stagnation. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your boundaries challenge their control. Your self-worth threatens their manipulation. But don't shrink. Don't apologize for evolving. You weren't put here to be a mirror for someone else's wounds. You were put here to become whole. So let's talk about energy. Every day, you're given a limited amount. Think of it like currency. And toxic people? They're expensive. Every argument, every overanalyzed message, every emotional spiral, it costs you time, sleep, joy, sanity. And what do they pay you back with? Guilt, confusion, silence, more chaos. At some point, you have to ask, is this a good investment? Because people who truly care about you won't drain you. They won't make you question your worth, your memory, your emotions. They won't weaponize your vulnerability. They'll hold it gently. They'll honor it. They'll give back. And that's how you know, the right people feel like rest. They don't ignite your anxiety, they soothe it. They don't make you smaller, they create space for you to grow. They don't take from you what they're unwilling to give. They show up. They stay. They speak truth without cruelty. They love without strings. Now, you might be wondering, what if the toxic person is family? A friend I've known for years? A partner I once loved deeply? That's when it gets hard. That's when guilt disguises itself as loyalty. But Buddhism teaches impermanence. Not everything, and not everyone, is meant to stay forever. The people who started with you aren't always meant to end with you. And holding on just because you've held on for so long? That's not love. That's fear. Fear of change. Fear of being alone. Fear of the unknown. But what if being alone is exactly what your soul needs right now? What if silence is not emptiness, but space? Space for clarity. For healing. For rediscovering who you are when no one else is pulling your strings. Because that person, that version of you, they're not broken. They're just buried. Beneath the guilt. Beneath the noise. Beneath the expectations that were never yours to carry. You don't need to become someone else to be loved. You need to become yourself and watch who stays. Because real love, healthy love, doesn't demand that you shrink. It doesn't ask you to dim your light so someone else can shine. It doesn't guilt-trip you into compliance. It celebrates you. Challenges you. Grounds you. And if that love isn't in your life yet, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you're still clearing space. It means you're healing from what you accepted when you didn't know better. But now you do. Now you see. And with that awareness comes power. Power to choose. Power to walk away. Power to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Every time you choose not to respond to manipulation, you reclaim a piece of your peace. Every time you say no without explanation, you strengthen your boundary. Every time you prioritize your well-being, you rewrite the narrative that told you love had to come with pain. This isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's not about cutting people off in anger. It's about releasing them in love. Wishing them healing, but no longer offering your heart as a bandage for their wounds. You are not responsible for fixing what someone else refuses to acknowledge. You are not the emotional landfill for someone else's trauma. You are not a punching bag for someone else's projections. You are a human being. A soul on a journey. And every step you take toward peace is a step away from the patterns that kept you stuck. So the next time someone tests your boundary, stay calm. Don't argue. Don't defend. Just act. Protect your space. Silence the noise. Choose yourself. Again and again and again. Not because you're selfish, but because you're finally waking up to the truth. No one is worth sacrificing your peace for. Not anymore. Not ever again. Let's take a moment and look at something deeper, your history with self-abandonment. How many times have you silenced your needs to avoid conflict? How many times? Have you silenced your needs to avoid conflict? How many times have you said yes while your soul screamed no? How many times have you kept the peace with others while creating a war within yourself? That isn't compassion. That's self-neglect. And yet, it becomes a pattern, especially when toxic relationships normalize it. Over time, you begin to believe that love always demands a sacrifice, that connection always comes with a cost, and that your voice, your needs, your feelings are somehow secondary. Buddhism calls this illusion, mistaking suffering for love. But when the illusion fades, you begin to see, real love includes you, too. One of the greatest shifts in spiritual growth is when you stop trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. That's when peace begins. You no longer fight to be seen where blindness is a choice. You no longer beg for honesty from someone who fears truth. You no longer shrink yourself to fit the mold of someone else's comfort zone. Instead, you become still. You become centered. And from that stillness, you observe. Because observing is power. When you observe without reacting, you see people as they are, not as you hoped they'd be. You notice patterns. You recognize manipulation. You feel the energy behind words, the truth behind actions, the emptiness behind apologies. That's where clarity is born, not in the noise of explanation, but in the silence of awareness. Some people apologize just to keep access to you. They don't apologize to change. They apologize to reset the cycle. They're not sorry they hurt you. They're sorry they don't have control over you anymore. And if you're not careful, they'll pull you right back in, with promises, nostalgia, emotional bait. But here's the truth, memory is a liar when it's filtered through longing. You'll remember the laughs, the I love yous, the sweet beginnings, but you'll forget the sleepless nights, the emotional spirals, the moments you questioned your worth. Don't let selective memory sabotage your healing. Don't romanticize what nearly destroyed you. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, attachment is the root of suffering. And often, what we call love is just attachment dressed in fear, fear of being alone, of starting over, of not being good enough without them. But being alone isn't the enemy. False connection is. Because nothing is lonelier than lying next to someone who doesn't see you. Nothing is more isolating than giving your all to someone who treats it like it's disposable. Loneliness isn't cured by company. It's cured by connection, and connection begins within. When you reconnect with yourself, you become less tolerant of half-hearted love. You stop chasing people who make you feel like you have to earn their affection. You stop trying to decipher mixed signals and start trusting your intuition. If it feels off, it is. If you feel drained after every interaction, that's a sign. If you feel like you're constantly proving your worth, you're in the wrong place. Real connection flows. It doesn't confuse. It doesn't require constant explanation. It aligns. Now, let's speak truth. Not everyone who hurt you meant to. Some people are operating from wounds they've never addressed. But that doesn't make it your job to absorb the consequences of their unhealed trauma. Buddhism teaches compassion, yes, but also discernment. You can wish someone healing and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still block their access. You can love someone deeply and still protect yourself from their chaos. That's not betrayal. That's maturity. That's balance. That's self-respect. And here's something else, boundaries don't ruin relationships. They reveal them. When you set a boundary and someone attacks you, guilt trips you, or withdraws their affection, that's not love being lost. That's control being lost. And if your relationship can't survive you honoring your truth, then it was never safe to begin with. Because people who love you will adjust. They'll listen. They'll honor your growth, not punish you for it. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors. They keep out the chaos and let in what's real. And real love doesn't mind boundaries. It respects them. Imagine this, a garden. Your peace is the soil. Your energy is the sunlight. Your attention is the water. Who you allow in determines what grows. Some people plant seeds. Others bring poison. And it's your job, not theirs, to decide who gets to stay. Just because someone knew you during your roots doesn't mean they're entitled to your bloom. Just because you shared history doesn't mean you owe them a future. You can honor the past without dragging it into the present. You can be grateful for the lesson and still graduate from the classroom. So what happens when you start walking away from what no longer serves you? At first, it feels strange. Empty. Quiet. You'll question yourself. Did I overreact? Was I too harsh? Maybe I should have given one more chance. That's natural. That's detox. You're not just releasing the person, you're releasing the version of you who tolerated that pain. And that takes time. Be patient. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll crave the very thing that broke you. That's okay. Let the craving pass. Don't answer it. Don't feed it. Don't believe it. Instead, anchor yourself in truth. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Remind yourself of why you left. Remind yourself of how much it cost you to stay. And remember, peace isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or closure texts. It comes in quiet mornings. In deeper breaths. In feeling safe in your own skin. That's the reward. That's the victory. And finally, don't be surprised when your peace starts irritating people who live in chaos. They'll call you distant. Cold. Arrogant. They'll say you've changed. Let them. You didn't come this far to play small for their comfort. You didn't endure all that pain just to go back to pretending. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not distant, you're discerning. You're not arrogant, you're aligned. This journey, this path to peace, isn't easy. It's lonely at times. But it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, you get to look in the mirror and know, I didn't betray myself today. I honored my energy. I chose me. And that's the highest form of love. That's Zen. That's awakening. That's coming home to yourself. Now imagine what it truly means to come home to yourself. Not just to spend time alone, but to return to the part of you that existed before the conditioning, before the betrayal, before you learned to abandon your own needs to keep the peace. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that the most sacred journey is not outwards, but inwards. It's not about changing the world to fit your comfort, it's about changing your relationship with yourself so you no longer seek comfort in the chaos of others. That's why so many spiritual teachings emphasize silence, stillness, and solitude, not as punishment, but as restoration. In silence, the truth gets louder. In stillness, the pain surfaces. In solitude, the healing begins. But healing is not always a beautiful process. It's messy. It's raw. It's confusing. Especially when the people around you want the version of you that tolerated the dysfunction. They'll say you're being difficult now, that you're not the same. And they're right, you're not. You're evolving. And evolution always threatens comfort zones. Especially the ones that depended on your silence, your compliance, your sacrifice. You were easier to manipulate when you didn't know your worth. Now that you do, they don't know how to relate to you anymore. That's okay. Let them go. Let them misunderstand you. Let them walk away if they must. You're not for everyone. But you are for you. And when you choose yourself, really choose yourself, life begins to reorganize. The people who thrive in your absence disappear. The ones who were only there for what you could offer start pulling back. But then, new energy comes in. People who see you, feel you, honor your boundaries, match your frequency. People who aren't intimidated by your truth but inspired by it. That's the reward for walking away from the false. You make space for what's real. Now let's talk about something deeply overlooked in this process: grief. Because even when you leave a toxic relationship, even when you know it was necessary, grief will show up. You'll miss what you thought it could be. You'll mourn the fantasy. You'll grieve the time, the effort, the versions of yourself you gave away in the hope that they'd change. That grief is valid. It doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. It means you're finally facing what you avoided for so long, the reality. And reality, though painful, is also freeing. Because only in truth can we be truly free. Grief, when allowed, transforms. It moves through you like a storm, uncomfortable but cleansing. Don't suppress it. Don't rush it. Don't shame yourself for still feeling sadness over someone who didn't treat you well. You're not grieving them. You're grieving who you were when you loved them. You're grieving the innocence, the hope, the time lost. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to grieve without judgment. In that softness, strength is born. And in time, something incredible happens. You stop waiting for closure from them. You stop expecting an apology that may never come. You stop needing them to admit they were wrong. Instead, you forgive yourself for ignoring the red flags, for overgiving, for believing in their potential more than their patterns. That self-forgiveness is the final key that unlocks your peace. Because the most painful part of toxic relationships isn't the ending, it's what they made you believe about yourself. That you were hard to love. That you weren't enough. That your needs were too much. But none of that was ever true. It was a reflection of their capacity, not your worth. Buddhist philosophy teaches that suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our attachment to what should have happened instead. And in relationships, that attachment is strong. We cling to potential. To what we wanted it to be. To the image we had in our mind. But potential isn't love. Someone's ability to change doesn't mean they will. And it's not your job to fix, to heal, to carry someone who refuses to walk their own path. Your only job is to be true to your soul. So what does it look like to live from that truth? It looks like honoring your intuition, even when it's inconvenient. It looks like choosing peace over familiarity. It looks like walking away from people who check all the logical boxes but make your spirit feel heavy. It looks like choosing a quiet dinner alone over another loud night with people who drain you. It looks like telling the truth, even if your voice shakes. Even if it ends the relationship. Even if it breaks your own heart. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to break your own heart, for the last time. You begin to build a new kind of relationship, not just with people, but with life. You start living in alignment. You say what you mean. You trust your energy. You don't force what's not flowing. You stop over-explaining and let your silence speak. You don't chase, you attract. And what you attract reflects who you've become, not who you were when you were still betraying yourself. This journey isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about asking, what do I need? What do I deserve? What am I no longer willing to tolerate, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means standing alone? Because you'll never feel peace trying to be who others need you to be. Real peace comes from being who you truly are, without apology. And as you walk this path, you'll notice something powerful. The relationships that remain, after all the shedding, the boundaries, the quiet exits, will be the ones built on truth. No masks. No manipulation. Just presence, respect, and real love. Love that doesn't demand you shrink. Love that celebrates your growth. Love that feels like home, not because it's perfect, but because it's safe. This is the invitation, to stop begging for crumbs when you deserve the whole feast. To stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. To stop loving others more than you love yourself. To stop waiting for someone else to make you feel whole. You are already whole. You are already enough. You are already free. And when you finally believe that, not just in your mind, but in your bones, you'll stop chasing the temporary and start choosing the eternal. You'll stop repeating cycles and start writing new stories. You'll stop surviving your relationships and start thriving in them. Because you've done the inner work. You've come home to yourself. And that, dear soul, is where the real love begins. There comes a moment on this path where silence no longer feels like emptiness, it feels like clarity. Where being alone doesn't equate to loneliness, but to liberation. Because you've come to understand something deeply sacred, your peace is priceless. And anything or anyone that consistently disturbs that peace is too expensive to keep. In the teachings of wisdom traditions like Buddhism, this clarity isn't accidental. It's the fruit of awareness. The more you awaken to yourself, the less you tolerate what no longer aligns. It's not because you've become cold, arrogant, or unforgiving. It's because you've learned to value what truly matters: truth, respect, energy, inner harmony. And when you've spent years betraying yourself to keep others comfortable, reclaiming your voice feels radical. Setting boundaries feels revolutionary. Saying no feels like a prayer. Not out of. It's not because you've become cold, arrogant, or unforgiving. It's because you've learned to value what truly matters: truth, respect, energy, inner harmony. And when you've spent years betraying yourself to keep others comfortable, reclaiming your voice feels radical. Setting boundaries feels revolutionary. Saying no feels like a prayer. Not out of bitterness, but out of reverence for your own spirit. You begin to notice how much energy you used to spend trying to be loved in places you were only tolerated. You remember how you used to water gardens that never bloomed, hoping your effort would one day be enough. But effort doesn't matter in a relationship where love is conditional. You can give your all to someone who only takes and still be left feeling empty. Why? Because love isn't about how much you give. It's about how much is returned with integrity. It's about reciprocity, mutual respect, emotional responsibility. And you deserve all of that. Buddhism reminds us that clinging to illusions causes suffering. And perhaps one of the greatest illusions we cling to is the idea that someone will change if we love them hard enough. But love doesn't fix people. It invites them. And if they refuse the invitation, if they stay rooted in avoidance, blame, or cruelty, it's not your fault. It never was. Their healing was never your responsibility. Your healing is. So what does healing look like now? It looks like letting go without needing to be right. Like choosing stillness over constant emotional warfare. Like waking up and not checking your phone for their name. Like no longer needing to prove your worth to someone who was blind to it. Healing looks like walking past the places that once held your heart, and feeling peace instead of pain. And one day, almost without realizing it, you'll notice how far you've come. The things that used to shake you now feel distant, even dull. The people who once had power over your emotions now seem like characters from a story you've outgrown. You don't flinch when they reach out. You don't rush to respond. You observe. You breathe. You respond from wholeness, not from woundedness. That's when you know the shift has happened. The power they held was never truly theirs, it was yours all along. They only had it because you handed it over, hoping they'd protect it. But now you protect your own peace. You guard your joy. You don't allow people access to your inner world just because they ask for it. They have to earn it. With consistency. With empathy. With truth. There's no rush to fill the empty spaces anymore. You're okay in your own company. You no longer see being alone as a curse, but as sacred space. A temple. A sanctuary. The people who deserve to be in your life now will honor that space, not invade it. They will come not to complete you, but to complement you. They won't demand your light. They'll reflect it. And they'll come with their own. Still, You'll have days when the past calls your name. When nostalgia creeps in and whispers, "Remember when?" But you'll also remember how much you suffered. How much you sacrificed. How you begged for clarity and got silence. How you needed truth and got manipulation. You'll remember how much it cost you to stay. And how powerful it felt to leave. So when those memories arise, you won't chase them down. You'll greet them with compassion. You'll say, "Thank you for the lesson. I no longer need to relive the pain to prove I've grown." And you'll return to your breath. To your center. To your truth. Because by now, you've learned something essential: closure doesn't come from others. It comes from within. From making peace with the version of you who stayed too long, gave too much, trusted too easily. You forgive them. Not because they were wrong, but because they were trying. They didn't have the tools, the knowledge, or the strength you do now. And that's okay. They got you here. And now you're walking differently. Softer, yes. But stronger too. More discerning. Less reactive. You speak less, but say more. You give less, but it's deeper. You don't rush to fix, explain, or prove. You allow people to show you who they are, and you believe them. You honor your body when it tightens around certain people. You trust the fatigue that comes after conversations that feel more like battles. You stop doubting your intuition. That is the beginning of true wisdom, honoring what your soul has always known but what your mind tried to ignore. That not every connection is meant to last. That not every person is meant to stay. That some souls are merely passing through to awaken parts of you that were asleep. And when they leave, because they will, you no longer see it as abandonment. You see it as completion. A chapter closing. A karmic thread unraveling. You bow to it. You grieve it. And then you rise. Not with bitterness. But with grace. You carry the lessons. Not the burden. You carry the strength. Not the story. You carry the love. But this time, it's for you. And that love? It becomes your compass. Your guide. Your protection. Your home. Because here's the truth, whispered in the quiet moments when your heart is still, you were never too much. You were never too sensitive. Too needy. Too emotional. You were just in environments that couldn't hold your depth. And now, you're learning to be the container. For yourself. For your dreams. For your peace. And one day, someone will come. Not because you begged. Not because you broke yourself down to be loved. But because your light called to theirs. And they'll sit beside you, not to save you, but to honor you. To grow with you. To meet you in truth. And it won't feel like chaos. It will feel like calm. That's what you were always worthy of. You just had to remember it. And now you do. And now that you remember your worth, everything starts to shift. The lens through which you view love, connection, and companionship is no longer clouded by desperation or longing. It is now clear, focused, and grounded in wisdom. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you bless. You no longer lose yourself for someone's attention because you've finally given that attention to the one person who always deserved it, you. And in this quiet realization, the world doesn't necessarily become easier, but it becomes clearer. You begin to notice what aligns with your peace and what disrupts it. And you have the courage to choose the former, even when the latter is familiar. Because now you know, familiarity doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes it just means repeated suffering with a new name. But peace feels different. It feels unfamiliar at first. Almost boring to the nervous system that's only known chaos. But then it begins to feel like home. And that peace is your greatest teacher. It shows you how to breathe again. how to trust your silence, how to rest in your own company. It teaches you that being seen isn't just about being looked at, but about being understood. That love isn't possession, it's freedom. That the right people won't fear your depth, they'll swim in it with you. Because the deeper you go into yourself, the fewer people can join you there. But that's not loneliness, it's refinement. And this refinement is sacred. It clears the noise. It purifies your field. It attracts the souls who are meant for you, not for the version of you that shrunk to be loved, but for the version that expanded to be whole. You stop apologizing for your growth, for being too spiritual, too emotional, too intense. You start celebrating it. You understand that those qualities aren't flaws, they're signals of your awakening. They're proof that your heart is still beating, still open, still alive despite all it's endured. And now, your love is no longer a desperate plea, it's a conscious offering. You don't give it to be chosen. You give it because it's who you are. And if someone can't receive it, you don't collapse. You bless them, you release them, and you continue onward. Because you know that real love, the kind that meets you with presence, devotion, and truth, can never be forced. It arrives when your soul is ready, not when your ego is begging. And this is the essence of the journey. To go from seeking love outside of you, to becoming love within you. To go from fearing loss, to understanding that what's meant for you will never leave you in confusion. To go from attachment to acceptance. From longing to loving. From craving to creating. Now, you create space for what aligns. You create time for what matters. You create boundaries not out of spite, but out of sacredness. You protect your energy as if it were holy, because it is. You understand that your time is a currency. Your emotions are investments. And your presence is a gift. So you no longer give these away lightly. And as you move forward with this newfound awareness, life begins to mirror it. The connections that once drained you begin to dissolve. The relationships that were built on illusion fall away. The people who were only there for a version of you that no longer exists begin to fade. And in their place, new souls begin to appear. Souls that feel like peace, not pressure. Like nourishment, not need. Like home, not harm. These are the ones your soul has been calling in. And they were waiting, not for your perfection, but for your wholeness. They don't come to complete you, because you're already complete. They come to walk beside you. To witness your evolution, not control it. To hold space for your truth, not shrink it. And you, in turn, do the same for them. Because love, in its truest form, is mutual liberation. It's two people walking side by side, not chained to each other, but free in their togetherness. It's not about who texts first, who cares more, who gives more. It's about authenticity, reciprocity, depth, and safety. And this kind of love isn't found when you're desperately searching. It's found when you become the kind of person who would attract it. When you embody the peace you crave. When you speak the truth you seek. When you heal the wounds you once tried to hide. So as you move forward from here, let your healing be your priority. Let your peace be your compass. Let your growth be non-negotiable. Because no one enters your life by chance, and that includes you. You didn't stumble into this awakening. You were guided. You didn't survive by accident. You endured for a reason. You are here, now, with this awareness, because your soul is ready to rise. To shed the stories that once defined you. To release the attachments that once confined you. To step into a life that reflects who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. This isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. One where you are the author. Where you choose peace over proving. Presence over performance. Purpose over perfection. And remember, you don't need to have it all figured out to move forward. You just need to trust your steps. Honor your growth. And keep choosing yourself, again and again, until it no longer feels like a rebellion, but like a return. A return to truth. A return to love. A return to you. Because that's where the journey leads. Always. Back home to yourself.